Alright, Odd Socks crew, today we're diving into something a little, let's just say, messier than usual. We're talking Splatterhouse 2. Now don't worry, this isn't a documentary about my garage after I've stepped on a tin of paint. No, this is Namco's 1992 horror beat-em-up where you play as Rick, a guy who looks very similar to Jason if he traded in the machete for a gym membership and a serious case of don't mess with me. The plot, simple. Your girlfriend's trapped in a haunted house, the furniture is very unfriendly, and the locals are, well, let's just say you wouldn't want them showing up at your local barbecue. The gameplay is basically walk into a room, scream internally, and then smash whatever's moving with a 2x4, and let me tell you, few things are more satisfying than turning a monster into chunky salsa with one swing. It's gross, it's goofy, and honestly, it's the only time you'll hear me say, wow, that puddle of slime looks kind of beautiful. So grab your odd socks, maybe a bucket for the splatter, and let's see if we can survive this horror house tour without needing a new pair of pants. As always, I'll be looking at the story, sound, and gameplay, but for a very first try, we're doing that streamlined so that you guys get my review a little bit quicker. The Namco Museum Collection 2 cartridge for the Evercade is one of the red console themed cards and is now classed as a legacy cartridge. That basically means Blazer's license to produce this game has currently run out, and that's why I had to pay a whopping $147.90 for this card alone. This was actually one of the very first Evercade releases, launching on June 18th, 2020 as cartridge number 6. It followed on from the original Namco Museum collection and helped cement the Evercade's identity early on with a lineup of console classics. So while you can still spot copies floating around, it's the legacy status that means this cart has officially moved from current release to part of Evercade history. Now, I paid $147.90 for this cart, but we can't say that because this has 11 games on it and we're only reviewing Splatterhouse 2. So for the purpose of this review, we need to say that I paid $13.45, meaning for me to get my $10 per hour ratio, I'll need to play and complete this game in longer than 1 hour and 21 minutes. And I can successfully say I achieved this, completing the game in 2 hours and 25 minutes, which is equivalent to my $10 per hour ratio of $5.59 per hour, which is a bargain in my books. I had a play count of 4, a load count of 249, and a save count of 62. Let's take a look at the story. Now, before we jump into Splatterhouse 2, here's the short version of what went down in the first game. Rick and his girlfriend Jennifer thought it would be a brilliant idea to hang out in a creepy mansion owned by a mad scientist. You know, as you do on a date night. Of course, things went as well as you'd expect. Monsters, blood, chaos, and Jennifer getting kidnapped. Rick, don't worry, he throws on his cursed hockey mask, which looks suspiciously like it came from the bargain bin of a slasher flick, and turns into a beefed up monster punching machine. So yeah, part 1 ends with Rick barely making it out, Jennifer still in danger, and the mask basically whispering, hey mate, we're not done just yet. And that's where Splatterhouse 2 picks up. Bigger, gorier, and twice as ridiculous. Alright, Odd Socks crew, strap in because Splatterhouse 2 picks up not long after the first game and things are just as gruesome and ridiculous as you'd expect. Rick's back still rocking the infamous terror mask and his mission is simple: rescue Jennifer. The setup? Jennifer has been kidnapped again. I know, I get it. Because apparently she's the ultimate bait for monsters, and the mansion's nightmare world has grown even worse, filled with new rooms, traps, and absolutely bizarre creatures that look like someone went a little too far with Halloween decorations. Think oversized mutants, grotesque skeletons, and monsters that make you go, wait, that's a thing? Rick isn't just walking in, he's smashing, punching, and headbutting his way through everything in sight. And that mask gives him super strength, letting him take down hordes of enemies with satisfying brawls. Every level throws new challenges at him, collapsing floors, spinning blades, and giant claws, and bosses feel like the mansion itself is personally offended by Rick's existence. The story is gloriously simple: get Jennifer back, survive the horror, and punch anything that moves. No convoluted plot twists, no moral dilemmas, just classic over-the-top arcade horror fun. The campy, exaggerated design makes it feel like you're inside a B-grade horror movie where every monster is bigger, grosser, and weirder than the last. It's messy, it's chaotic, and it's hilarious, and the fun comes from watching Rick waddle his way through the madness with only the terror mask, his fists, and a determination that somehow borders on stubborn stupidity. By the time you reach the final boss, you're laughing, yelling, and maybe even questioning how Jennifer keeps ending up in these stupid, silly situations. But it doesn't matter. Rick is here to smash, splatter, and save the day. In short, Splatterhouse 2 is Rick, plus the terror mask, plus bizarre monsters, plus insane traps, and that all equals pure pixelated horror chaos. It's ridiculous, it's gross, and it's absolutely the kind of game where you grin the whole time wondering who designed this madness. So for the odd sock score, I'd give the story of Splatterhouse 2 a 4 out of 10. Part of that might just be because I didn't play the first game, so when this one started, I was just like, okay, cool, another horror adventure. The plot isn't complicated, it's basically Rick's girlfriend gets kidnapped and somehow that leads him straight into a portal to hell. Yep, you heard that right, a portal to hell. Why? Well, that's just classic horror movie logic. Bad things happen, portals open, and apparently monsters love a good welcoming party. And honestly, I didn't care because the setup is basically an excuse for what the game does best: smashing things. You get to punch zombies, take down deranged mad scientists, and even go toe-to-tentacle with a giant bloody octopus. I mean, sure, it's ridiculous, it's over the top, and probably biologically impossible, but that's exactly what makes it fun. Rick's mask and muscle combo gives off full-on Jason meets arcade chaos energy, and the game leans hard into the horror vibe. It's gory, messy, and gloriously unhinged, the kind of game where the story is just there to let you spend hours smashing monsters in the most outrageous ways possible. So yeah, the story itself is simple and a little bonkers. Portal to hell, check. Monsters everywhere, check. Gore galore, double check. But honestly, that's all I needed. It sets the stage perfectly for a fun, chaotic, and utterly ridiculous monster-smashing adventure, and I'm here for every second of it. Let's take a look at the sound. The soundtrack of Splatterhouse 2 was composed by Iko Kaneda, a talented Japanese composer and sound designer affiliated with Now Production. Her work perfectly blends eerie melodies with intense pulse-pounding rhythms, enhancing the game's horror atmosphere. From the haunting opening theme that sets the stage for the dark adventure to the suspenseful and aggressive stage tracks, and the music keeps players on edge while matching the pace of the action. Boss fights feature adrenaline-pumping compositions that makes each encounter feel epic, while the climactic final boss theme heightens the sense of urgency in impending doom. The sound effects, from grotesque monster noises to the satisfying thuds of combat, complement Kaneda's music and immerse players into the chaotic, terrifying world. The full soundtrack showcases Kaneda's skill in creating music that balances tension, excitement, and pure horror arcade fun. Combined with the game's pixelated visuals, the soundtrack elevates the experience, making Splatterhouse 2 a memorable, spine-tingling adventure. So like I said, the sound of Splatterhouse 2 doesn't just pump up the action, it drips with classic horror vibes. From the moment you start, Kaneda's music wraps you in an eerie, unsettling atmosphere that feels like a haunted house set to 16 bits. Creepy melodies creep in during quieter moments, making you double check that you haven't left your controller near a real monster, or, the household cat. Then, when a boss or enemy appears, the music ramps up into high-octane, adrenaline-fueled chaos, perfectly matching the terror and intensity of the fight. It's like your own horror movie soundtrack that reacts to your every swing of Rick's fists. The sound effects adds even more horror flavor. Bones crunch, monsters roar, doors groan, and your punches land with cartoonishly violent thwacks that somehow makes the violence feel both scary and ridiculously fun. Those creaking floors to the sudden growls, classic horror tropes done right. It's like the game read every scary movie manual and said, we'll take that, multiply it by 10, and add pixel gore.
Yo. What's up?
The combination of music and sound effects create a vibe that's genuinely tense, but still over the top. You feel like you're in a haunted mansion or a creepy laboratory where anything can jump out at you, and probably it will. Every stage, every encounter, and every boss fight is amplified by the audio, so you're constantly on edge, heart racing, laughing at the absurdity, and maybe letting out a terrified, oh no, at the same time. Splatterhouse 2 nails that classic horror arcade feel: spooky, intense, messy, and totally addictive. A perfect mix of scares and ridiculousness that keeps you coming back for more. And now for the odd sock score, I'd give the sound of Splatterhouse 2 a solid 6 out of 10. The music by Akito Kaneda is intense, atmospheric, and perfectly sets the mood for spooky mansions, mad scientists, and bloodthirsty monsters. It's the kind of soundtrack that makes you want to fire up some classic horror movies while you play. Suddenly you're imagining Rick bashing through zombies to the tune of vintage slasher score, maybe even sipping soda and eating popcorn in a darkened arcade. The sound effects are gloriously over the top, and every time Rick swings his fist, it lands with bone-crunching sounds like someone stepped on a bag of popcorn, and monsters roar like they're auditioning for a horror movie scream-off. Doors creak, floors groan, and jump scares are perfectly punctuated by audio cues that keep you on edge. Your heart might even skip a beat, but in a fun, I'm actually loving this chaos kind of way. It's ridiculous, gory, and absolutely fun, giving the game that classic chaotic horror arcade vibe that keeps you entertained from start to finish. Let's take a look at the gameplay. So the gameplay of Splatterhouse 2 is pure chaotic arcade horror fun. You take control of Rick wielding fists, clubs, and whatever weapon you can grab along the way, smashing through hordes of grotesque monsters, mad scientists, and yes, some truly bizarre bosses. The controls are tight and responsive, which is critical when you're juggling regular enemies with giant grotesque bosses that seem to take up half the bloody screen. Timing your attacks, jumps, and dashes is key here, and one wrong move and Rick gets flattened, eaten, or otherwise horribly squashed. Levels are designed to keep you on your toes, and you'll run through haunted mansions, creepy laboratories, and yes, portals that basically scream, welcome to hell. Along the way, you'll pick up temporary weapons like clubs or hammers, or even a shotgun, adding variety to the combat. And each stage mixes standard enemies with environmental hazard, spiked floors, swinging blades, and collapsing platforms, so you're constantly balancing movement and attack. The weapon system adds a little bit of a layer of strategy because certain enemies or bosses are easier to take down with a weapon than with your bare fists, and you're constantly scanning the environment for that next handy object to grab, which keeps combat feeling fresh and chaotic. One moment you're dodging a swinging axe, and next you're smashing a zombie with a conveniently dropped club. It's messy, it's gory, and it's just plain fun. Boss fights are a real highlight. They're all about pattern recognition and memorization, but that's half the fun. Whether you're dodging a mad scientist's exploding concoctions or a giant bloody octopus flailing its tentacles, each encounter feels like a mini horror movie, and the thrill of finally landing that perfect series of attacks, pure arcade satisfaction. You feel like you survived a weekend of bad B-movie horror, all in one sitting. The combination of weapon pickups and frantic punching makes the game feel alive. You're not just reacting, you're planning your chaos while also having to think fast. It's a classic arcade balance of skill, timing, and ridiculous over-the-top action, keeping you hooked from start to finish. And now for the Odd Socks review, I'd give the gameplay of Splatterhouse 2 a 5 out of 10. Rick's sprite is massive, and I mean, he's ridiculously huge, which makes every jump, swing, and dodge a serious challenge. You think you can clear that spike? Nope, that giant pixel-packed Rick just barely scrapes it, and suddenly you're flattened. Timing everything perfectly becomes less fun and more precision nightmare, but in a weirdly satisfying kind of way. Boss fights are all about memorization, and you need to learn their patterns and attack, timing, or risk getting squashed in seconds. Regular enemies don't vary that much, and you'll see the zombies and the creatures and blobs of gore keep popping up over and over again.
He slimed me. That's great! Actual physical contact!
So the challenge comes from Rick's size and the hazards rather than the enemy variety. Despite this, the game has a solid rhythm: smash, dodge, memorize, repeat. It's chaotic, it's gory, and it's absolutely classic arcade. There's satisfaction in finally beating a tricky section, and the over-the-top bosses makes each victory feel earned. Splatterhouse 2 may not reinvent the wheel here, but it delivers enough chaos and horror action to keep you entertained. Overall, I'd give Splatterhouse 2 a 5 out of 10. It was fun enough while I played it, but it wasn't memorable enough for me to keep coming back to again and again. The pacing felt a bit slow. Even when I was trying to outrun some of the boss chases, I felt like I was sprinting through a vat of cold oatmeal. And of course, part of that might just be the enormous size of Rick's sprite. And I mean enormous. Look at the size of his muscles. He is absolutely massive. Despite the slower pace, there's still plenty to enjoy. The bosses are over the top and gory, smashing through waves of zombies and other grotesque horrors that look like they've come straight out of a nightmare or a really bad Halloween party. The death scenes are actually pretty cool, and I had fun picking up some of the objects along the way, and for a horror game, I didn't mind a little interactive chaos. The level themselves are pure haunted mansion meets hellish portal madness, filled with traps and hazards that will make you scream, groan, or laugh, depending on your tolerance for pixelated gore. Look, this game, it kept me interested enough that I'm already itching to dive into Splatterhouse 3, and let's be honest, there's something deeply satisfying about smashing monsters, dodging spikes, and feeling like a massive, unstoppable, pixelated force, even if it's at a snail's pace. Thank you so much for watching another deep dive Evercade completion review. I hope you enjoyed this new streamlined version of the video, and if you did, please give me a like, subscribe, and comment down below, because your guys' comments is what keeps me motivated, and my channel goal is to see if I can hit 200 subs before Christmas 2025. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and be part of my journey in achieving that goal. Until next time, stay odd, stay awesome, and we'll see you next Friday for another video of the Odd Socks. See you later, guys.